It's 1952. The narrow alleyways of Osaka's Korean quarter are filled with the sounds of struggle. Vendors hawk vegetables from wooden carts, their voices mixing Korean and broken Japanese. Children with patched clothes play in puddles, their laughter echoing off cramped apartment buildings. This is where Ko Yong-hui enters the world. In North Korea's royal family, bloodline is everything. But the woman who would build the current dynasty was born into nothing, a complete outsider in a foreign land. She was a Zainichi Korean, part of a community caught between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. Zainichi Koreans were ethnic Koreans living in Japan after World War II, often marginalized and treated as outsiders by both Japan and Korea. The Korea her parents remembered no longer existed. The Japan they lived in did not want them. And somewhere far to the north, a new country called the Democratic People's Republic of Korea promised to be their salvation. That's the full name of what we today simply call North Korea. Ko Yong-hui's father, Ko Kyung-taek, runs a small judo dojo. His hands, scarred from years of training, tremble slightly as he counts the day's meager earnings. Her mother works long hours in a textile factory, her fingers stained with dye, her back bent from hunching over sewing machines. They speak in hushed Korean at home, but outside they must bow their heads and speak Japanese. Young Ko Yong-hui watches it all. Even as a child, her eyes burn with something the other children lack: a fierce intelligence and an iron determination to rise above these circumstances. At school, she sits in the back row. The Japanese children whisper and point. "Look at her eyes," they say. "Different." She pretends not to hear, but every word cuts deep. During lunch, she eats alone, her Korean-style rice wrapped in seaweed marking her as foreign, but she studies harder than anyone else. She memorizes every kanji character, perfects her Japanese pronunciation, and scores at the top of her class. After school, she practices dance in secret. In a tiny corner of their cramped apartment, with only the sound of her mother's sewing machine for music, she moves. Ballet positions learned from a torn magazine. Traditional Korean movements passed down from her grandmother. Modern dance steps glimpsed through the windows of expensive studios she can never afford to enter. The mirror in her room is cracked, but in its fractured reflection, she sees something others don't. Not an outcast, not a victim, a future star. The year is 1970. Deep inside a luxurious mansion in Pyongyang, a young woman stands before an ornate mirror, adjusting her silk hanbok one final time. The fabric catches the light from crystal chandeliers above. Her hands tremble slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation. In just 2 hours, she will perform before North Korea's future leader. Tonight, her destiny will be decided. Her name is Ko Yong-hui, and she is about to change the course of history. But to understand how this moment came to be, we must travel back 20 years to a very different world. Then, in the late 1950s, everything changes. North Korean officials arrive in Japan's Korean communities like prophets bearing news of salvation. They speak of a workers' paradise where Koreans are not second-class citizens, but honored builders of a socialist utopia. They show films of pristine cities, happy children, and abundant harvests. "Come home," they say. "Come to the homeland you've never seen, but that calls to you." This campaign was part of a mass repatriation program that encouraged over 90,000 ethnic Koreans in Japan to move to North Korea between 1959 and 1984. The promise is intoxicating: free housing, free education, free health care, no more discrimination, no more bowing to Japanese employers who pay Korean workers half the wages, no more children coming home with bruised faces and broken spirits. Ko Yong-hui is 9 years old when the propaganda films first flicker across the community center wall. She watches, mesmerized, as Korean children her age dance in perfect formation, their faces glowing with joy. They wear beautiful costumes and perform before massive crowds who cheer and clap with genuine enthusiasm. "That could be you," her mother whispers, squeezing her hand. "In the homeland, your talents would be treasured." For 3 years, the family debates. Ko Yong-hui is hesitant. Japan may be cruel, but it's familiar. North Korea is an unknown. What if the promises are lies? What if they're walking into a trap? But as discrimination intensifies and opportunities dwindle, the dream of return becomes irresistible. In 1962, they make the fateful decision. December 15th, 1962, Niigata Port is shrouded in morning mist as Ko Yong-hui, now 10, stands at the dock beside the ship that will carry her to destiny. The vessel towers above her, not the luxury liner she had imagined, but a functional Soviet cargo ship hastily converted for passenger transport. Around her, thousands of other Zainichi Koreans wait with their belongings packed into old suitcases and cloth bundles. Some weep openly, saying goodbye to the only country they've ever known. Others sing revolutionary songs, their voices full of hope and determination. Children run between their parents' legs, too young to understand they're leaving forever. Ko Yong-hui remains silent, her eyes scanning the faces around her. She's already calculating. These people are her competition. When they reach North Korea, they'll all be fighting for the same opportunities, the same chances to prove their loyalty and worth. The ship's horn blasts across the harbor. Families begin boarding, their footsteps echoing on metal gangways. Ko Yong-hui takes one last look at Japan, at the country that rejected her, but also shaped her. Then she turns her back on it forever. The journey across the East Sea takes 2 days. Most passengers spend their time seasick in cramped quarters below deck. But Ko Yong-hui stands at the rail, watching the gray waters part before the ship's bow. She's not looking back at Japan's disappearing coastline. She's looking forward, toward the North Korean shore that will either make her dreams come true or destroy them entirely. When the lights of Chongjin Port finally appear through the morning fog, the passengers cheer. They've arrived in the promised land, but Ko Yong-hui notices what others miss: the shabby buildings, the thin crowds of officials waiting to process them, the guards with their hands resting on their weapons. For many returnees, this first sight of North Korea was a shock. The paradise they were promised looked far more impoverished than Japan, even in its poorest districts. This is not the paradise they were promised. This is something else entirely. The processing center in Chongjin is nothing like the propaganda films. Concrete walls stained with dampness, harsh fluorescent lights that flicker intermittently, officials in worn uniforms who process the returnees with cold efficiency, checking documents and assigning housing based on mysterious criteria no one explains. Ko Yong-hui's family is assigned to a small apartment in a housing block designated for Japanese returnees. The walls are thin. The heating barely works. Through the single window, she can see identical gray buildings stretching toward the horizon. These returnee districts were segregated, and residents were viewed with suspicion as potential foreign influences. They would carry this stigma for generations. But she also sees something else. This is a test. North Korea hasn't welcomed them home. It's challenging them to prove they belong. Within weeks, the harsh reality becomes clear. Being a Japanese returnee in North Korea means permanent suspicion. Their every move is watched, their loyalty constantly questioned. In a society where your songbun, your family's political classification, determines everything from your job prospects to your children's education, they start at the very bottom. Ko Yong-hui watches her father's spirit break. The proud judo instructor becomes a laborer in a cement factory, his skills deemed irrelevant in the new society. Her mother takes in sewing work at home, her eyes straining in the dim light as she earns barely enough to buy rice. But Ko Yong-hui refuses to accept defeat. In this controlled society where class background dominates fate, she realizes a brutal truth. Those born with nothing must forge their own weapons. For a young, beautiful girl with extraordinary talent, those weapons are her body and her art. She begins attending the local cultural center, where children learn revolutionary songs and dances. While others struggle with the basic movements, Ko Yong-hui excels effortlessly. Her years of secret practice in Osaka have given her a foundation others lack. Her natural grace, combined with iron discipline, makes her stand out immediately. The stage becomes her battlefield. Not simply a place to dance, but the only arena where she can defeat the destiny assigned to her birth. Even in North Korea's oppressive system, there are rare pathways for the politically unreliable to dream of advancement. The arts and sports represent almost the only escape from the rigid caste system. Those with exceptional talent can be treated as treasures of the Republic, enjoying privileges that transcend their family background. For many returnees with low songbun, sports or performing arts were the only chance to escape discrimination and gain state favor. Ko Yong-hui discovers her possibility in this narrow path. She throws herself into training with the intensity of someone fighting for her life, because that's exactly what she's doing. While other girls her age attend regular school and help with household chores, Ko Yong-hui practices 8, 10, 12 hours a day. Her feet bleed in her worn ballet shoes. Her muscles scream from exhaustion. But she never stops. The local instructors are amazed. Here is a girl with the technical precision of a trained dancer, the passionate expression of a natural performer, and the discipline of a professional athlete. Her movements blend the classical grace of Korean traditional dance with the refined techniques she somehow acquired in Japan. More importantly, she has something most North Korean performers lack, an indefinable quality that makes audiences unable to look away. Perhaps it's her exotic features, subtly different from typical Korean beauty. Perhaps it's the hungry intensity in her eyes, the sense that she's dancing not just to entertain, but to survive. Whatever it is, it's magnetic. Word of the extraordinary young dancer begins spreading through cultural circles. Regional competitions, provincial festivals. Each performance brings her closer to the center of power. Each victory erases a little more of the stigma of her Japanese origins. In her mid-teens, the impossible happens. She receives an invitation that changes everything. A summons to audition for the Mansudae Art Troupe. The Mansudae Art Troupe is not simply North Korea's premier cultural organization. It's the artistic equivalent of the royal court, where only the most elite performers gain entry. These are artists with flawless technique, stunning beauty, and, most importantly, unquestionable political backgrounds. They perform exclusively for the highest leadership, including Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il themselves. The troupe functioned as a cultural palace, producing propaganda art and entertaining the Kim family. Entry meant access to the innermost circle of power. For a Japanese returnee to even audition is unprecedented. For her to succeed would be miraculous. The audition takes place in a grand theater in central Pyongyang, a building that seems to exist in a different universe from the gray apartment blocks where most citizens live. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across polished marble floors. Velvet curtains frame a stage larger than any Ko Yong-hui has ever seen. She stands in the wings with dozens of other hopefuls, girls from the most privileged families in North Korea, trained from birth for this moment. They whisper among themselves, their accents refined, their confidence born from lives of luxury and certainty. Ko Yong-hui says nothing. She simply stretches, preparing her body for the performance that will either fulfill her dreams or end them. When her name is called, she walks onto that vast stage and into the blazing spotlights. The panel of judges sits in darkness beyond the lights, their faces invisible. For a moment, she's back in that cramped Osaka apartment, dancing alone to the sound of her mother's sewing machine. Then the music begins. What happens next is pure artistry touched by desperation. Ko Yong-hui doesn't simply dance. She tells the story of every rejected Korean child, every immigrant dream, every impossible journey from the margins to the center. Her body becomes a poem of longing and determination. Her movements speak of suffering transformed into strength. When the music stops, the theater is completely silent. Then, from the darkness, comes the sound of slow, deliberate applause. She's been accepted. Within the Mansudae art troupe, Ko Yong-hui is exceptional, even among the exceptional. She masters not only classical Korean dance, but absorbs every other style: modern, ballroom, even bits of jazz and contemporary dance that filter in through black market films and foreign cultural exchanges. Her exotic appearance becomes an asset. In a country where uniformity is prized, she offers something different without being threatening. Her features are Korean enough to avoid suspicion, but unique enough to be memorable. Her performances have a sophistication that comes from her Japanese upbringing, a refinement that sets her apart from her peers. She rises rapidly through the troupe's hierarchy. Solo performances, featured roles. Her name begins circulating among party officials who attend the exclusive shows. But Ko Yong-hui has not forgotten the lesson of her childhood. She is still an outsider, fighting for acceptance in a world that did not want her. She cannot simply be good. She must be indispensable. She cannot simply perform. She must become irreplaceable. She studies the officials who watch her performances, memorizing their faces, their preferences, their power dynamics. She learns which songs make Kim Il-sung nod with approval, which dances cause Kim Jong-il to lean forward in his seat with interest. Most importantly, she observes Kim Jong-il himself, the young heir to power who controls not just North Korea's future, but the fate of everyone in it, including her own. Kim Jong-il was the son of founding leader Kim Il-sung, and would later become the father of today's ruler, Kim Jong-un. In the 1970s, he was consolidating his role as heir apparent. She notices that he attends performances more frequently than his father. She sees how his eyes track certain dancers across the stage. She understands that in this system, proximity to power is the only path to security. She begins sending invisible signals across the theater. Not obvious flirtation, that would be dangerous, but subtle acknowledgments, brief eye contact during bows, a smile that lasts just a heartbeat longer when she knows he's watching. She's not just performing for the audience anymore. She's auditioning for the role that will define the rest of her life. It's the early 1970s. The calendar shows that nearly a decade has passed since that frightened 10-year-old girl stepped off the ship from Japan. But Ko Yong-hui remembers every moment of that journey. Now, in her late teens, approaching 20, she stands at the pinnacle of North Korea's cultural world. But she knows this isn't enough. Art is still just performance. She needs something more permanent, more powerful. Inside the Mansudai art troupe headquarters, secret parties for the highest leadership are becoming more frequent. These aren't simple banquets or cultural events. They're intimate gatherings where Kim Jong-il can relax away from the formalities of state functions, where he can evaluate the loyalty and attractions of the young performers who surround him. Such gatherings were notorious as banquets of the Crown Prince, where Kim Jong-il tested both political loyalty and personal charm of his entourage. For the dancers, these invitations represent the ultimate test. To refuse would mean career suicide. To attend requires walking a razor's edge between professional duty and personal danger. Some emerge from these evenings with enhanced status and privileges. Others disappear from the troupe entirely, their fate whispered about but never openly discussed. Ko Yong-hui has been invited to tonight's gathering. She stands again before that cracked mirror, but now it's been replaced by an ornate vanity in her private dressing room. The reflection shows a woman transformed, no longer the desperate refugee girl, but a polished jewel of the North Korean cultural elite. Her dress is exquisite, silk imported from China, tailored to perfection, chosen specifically for tonight's performance. Her hair is arranged in an elaborate style that suggests both tradition and modernity. Her makeup is subtle but striking, emphasizing her unique features without appearing artificial. But beneath the glamour, her hands still tremble slightly. Not from fear. Ko Yong-hui has long since conquered fear. From anticipation. Because she knows that tonight is not just another performance. Tonight is the night she makes her move for ultimate power. The party is held in a private dining room that few North Koreans will ever see. French wine sits beside Korean delicacies. Crystal glasses catch the light from golden chandeliers. A select group of officials and performers mingle in an atmosphere of carefully orchestrated informality. And there, holding court at the center of it all, is Kim Jong-il himself. He's younger than his eventual international image, not yet the bloated, paranoid dictator of later years, but a charismatic heir apparent with refined tastes and dangerous appetites. His eyes sweep the room, evaluating, calculating, always searching for new sources of entertainment and inspiration. When those eyes finally settle on Ko Yong-hui, the real performance begins. She doesn't rush forward or seek immediate attention. Instead, she positions herself perfectly within his line of sight, engaging in animated conversation with other guests while remaining acutely aware of his gaze. When she laughs, it's with genuine enjoyment but also calculated charm. When she moves, it's with the fluid grace that first made her famous, but now serves a different purpose entirely. The moment comes when Kim Jong-il requests entertainment. The other performers offer traditional songs and dances, Safe choices that won't offend or challenge. Ko Yong-hui waits. Then she steps forward. "If I may," she says, her voice carrying just the right blend of confidence and deference, "I have prepared something special for this evening." The music begins, not a familiar revolutionary song, but something more complex, more personal. As Ko Yong-hui begins to move, it becomes clear that this is not just a dance. It's a seduction performed with the highest artistic skill, a political statement disguised as entertainment. Her movements tell a story of loyalty transformed into love, of artistic perfection offered in service to power. Every gesture speaks of her journey from foreign outcast to devoted subject, from struggling refugee to polished jewel worthy of the highest attention. But most importantly, her eyes never leave Kim Jong-il's face. This is not a performance for the room. It's a conversation between two people, conducted in the language of movement and desire. When the dance ends, the room erupts in applause. But Ko Yong-hui pays no attention to the crowd. She watches Kim Jong-il, sees the spark of interest in his eyes, the slight smile that plays across his lips. At that moment, she knows she has succeeded. At the time, actress Sung Hae-rim stands as Kim Jong-il's official companion. But Ko Yong-hui can see what others miss, the strain in their relationship, the way he turns away when Sung Hae-rim approaches, the exhaustion in his expression when he thinks no one is watching. Sung Hae-rim is brilliant and beautiful, but she's also melancholy and often ill, requiring constant attention and care. Sung Hae-rim was North Korea's most famous actress in the 1960s and Kim Jong-il's first partner. She gave birth to his eldest son, Kim Jong-nam, though the relationship was hidden from the public. Ko Yong-hui offers something entirely different. Youth. Vitality. The intoxicating energy of someone who has fought for everything she has and is hungry for more. As the party winds down and guests begin to leave, Kim Jong-il approaches her directly. "That was exceptional," he says, his voice quiet enough that only she can hear. "Thank you," she replies, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I hoped it would please you." "It did more than please me," he says, and in those words she hears the promise of everything she has dreamed of since that gray morning when she first stepped off the ship from Japan. The collision of two destinies begins with a single glance across a crowded room. The outsider from Osaka has just fired the opening shot in her war for ultimate power. But this is only the beginning of a story that will reshape North Korea itself, creating a new branch of the Kim dynasty, while burying forever the memory of a frightened refugee girl who dared to dream of becoming a queen. The party ends just after midnight, but for Ko Yong-hui, the real performance is just beginning. As the last guests file out of the ornate dining room, she lingers, pretending to gather her belongings while watching Kim Jong-il from the corner of her eye. He dismisses his security detail with a subtle gesture, then approaches her with the confident stride of a man accustomed to getting what he wants. His invitation is not a request, but a command. They step onto a moonlit terrace overlooking Pyongyang. The city spreads below them like a constellation of dim lights, most windows already dark as the population settles into state-mandated sleep. In North Korea, electricity shortages meant most homes were dark by evening, while the ruling elite lived in brightly lit enclaves. But here, in this rarefied world of power, the night is just beginning. Kim Jong-il lights a cigarette with a gold lighter, his eyes studying her face in the flame's brief glow. His question about Japan carries dangerous undertones. Any mention of positive experiences in the capitalist enemy nation could be construed as ideological corruption. North Korea officially considered Japan both an imperialist enemy and a place of exile for ethnic Koreans, so praising it openly was politically dangerous. But Ko Yong-hui reads the subtext in his expression. He's not testing her loyalty. He's genuinely curious about the outside world he can never visit openly. Her response is carefully calibrated, acknowledging difficulty while expressing gratitude for her current position. She speaks of experiencing darkness to appreciate light, a diplomatic answer that reveals intelligence without seeming threatening, vulnerability without appearing weak. For an hour they stand together, discussing art, music, and the complexities of leadership. Ko Yong-hui reveals just enough of herself to intrigue without intimidating, to seem authentic without exposing weakness. When he finally escorts her to a waiting car, his fingers brush against hers as he opens the door, a gesture both casual and deliberate. His parting words express desire to see her again. Her response conveys honor at the prospect, their eyes meeting in mutual understanding of what has begun. As the car carries her through the empty streets of Pyongyang, Ko Yong-hui allows herself a small smile of triumph. The first battle is won, but she knows the war has only just begun. Across the city, in the luxurious residence known as House Number 5, another woman sits by her window, staring out at the same moonlit landscape. House Number 5 was one of Kim Jong-il's private residences in Pyongyang, reserved for his closest circle and companions. Sung Hae-rim, North Korea's most celebrated actress, has not attended tonight's party. These gatherings have become increasingly painful for her, watching her lover's attention drift to younger, more vibrant performers, while she struggles with chronic illness and deepening melancholy. At 35, Sung Hae-rim is still breathtakingly beautiful. Her face has graced countless revolutionary films, her performances moving audiences to tears of patriotic fervor. She gave birth to Kim Jong-il's first son, Kim Jong-nam, in 1971, though their relationship remains hidden from the public and, more dangerously, from Kim Il-sung himself. Kim Jong-nam was once considered Kim Jong-il's heir, but decades later he would fall from favor and be assassinated in Malaysia in 2017. But Sung Hae-rim is tired. Years of secrecy, of being the hidden woman behind the heir to power, have worn her down. Her health is fragile. Frequent headaches, unexplained fatigue, a persistent cough that doctors cannot cure. Worse, she can feel Kim Jong-il's affection cooling, his visits becoming less frequent, his manner more distant. She has heard whispers about the young dancer who performed tonight. The Japanese returnee with the mesmerizing stage presence and exotic beauty. The girl who dances as if her life depends on it. Because it does. Sung Hae-rim closes her eyes and tries to push away the growing certainty that her time is ending. But in the cruel mathematics of power, there is always someone younger, hungrier, more desperate waiting to take your place. Over the following weeks, Kim Jong-il begins summoning Ko Yong-hui to private meetings at various state guest houses around Pyongyang. These guest houses were heavily guarded villas, often used for private banquets, secret affairs, or confidential political meetings. These are not crude propositions, but sophisticated seductions, carefully orchestrated to make her feel chosen rather than used. He opens his private world to her in ways that would be unthinkable for ordinary North Koreans. In luxurious screening rooms, they watch Western films that could mean execution for anyone else. James Bond adventures, Hollywood musicals, French art house cinema. Kim Jong-il was an obsessive film collector. He owned more than 20,000 foreign films and even abducted South Korean filmmakers in the 1970s to build his movie industry. They sit side by side in plush leather chairs, sharing bottles of French wine while discussing cinematography and storytelling. Her insightful commentary on a Kurosawa film draws his obvious admiration. Most people in his presence simply echo what they believe he wants to hear, but Ko Yong-hui offers genuine intellectual engagement. Her observations reveal both sophistication and independence of thought. These intimate evenings expose a side of Kim Jong-il invisible to the public. Away from the rigid formalities of state functions, he displays genuine cultural knowledge and sophisticated artistic opinions. His passion for North Korean cinema's future and his vision for transforming the country's cultural landscape emerge through animated discussions that stretch deep into the night. Ko Yong-hui listens with calculated intensity, asking precisely the right questions, offering perspectives shaped by her unique background. But beneath her apparent spontaneity lies careful performance. Every laugh, every insight, every moment of seeming vulnerability is designed to deepen his fascination while maintaining her own strategic position. The decisive moment arrives during a private dinner at a secluded mountain retreat. As conversation turns to her experiences in Japan, Ko Yong-hui allows a crack to appear in her polished exterior. Her admission of perpetual outsider status, too Korean for Japan, too foreign for North Korea, strikes precisely the emotional chord she intends. Her carefully choreographed vulnerability creates the opening Kim Jong-il has been unconsciously seeking. His response bridges the final gap between political courtship and personal intimacy, sealing their transformation from leader and performer to partners in power. That night marks Ko Yong-hui's complete transition from dancing for Kim Jong-il's attention to claiming her place beside him. Unlike Sung-hae Rim, who had been swept along by passion and circumstance, Ko Yong-hui enters this ultimate relationship as a calculating equal with her own agenda. She accepts not just his desire, but her position in the hierarchy of absolute power. What follows is one of the most fascinating and brutal contests for influence in modern political history. A war fought entirely in shadows, where the weapons are charm and cunning, and the battlefield is the heart of a future dictator. In North Korea, personal relationships often decide political futures. Who bears the leader's child and who holds his affection can determine the entire line of succession. On one side stands Sung-hae Rim, the established favorite, the mother of Kim Jong-il's eldest son, the woman who has shared his bed and his secrets for years. Her advantages are experience, maternal bonds, and deep emotional history. Sung-hae Rim was once North Korea's most famous actress and secretly gave birth to Kim Jong-nam, Kim Jong-il's first son. But their relationship had to be hidden from Kim Il-sung, the country's founding leader. On the other side stands Ko Yong-hui, younger, hungrier, more adaptable. Her weapons are youth, vitality, and the intoxicating energy of someone still climbing rather than defending their position. The conflict plays out in dozens of small battles. When Kim Jong-il chooses which woman to invite to cultural events, which residents to visit on a given evening, whose opinions to seek on matters of policy, each decision shifts the balance of power. Sung-hae Rim's health continues to deteriorate. She suffers from mysterious ailments that leave her bedridden for days at a time. Some whisper that the stress of competing with a younger rival is literally killing her. Others suggest more sinister explanations, though nothing is ever proven. In North Korean elite circles, unexplained illness often sparks rumors of poisoning or political sabotage, though evidence is rarely revealed. Ko Yong-hui, meanwhile, blooms with confidence. She moves into increasingly luxurious accommodations, first a high-end apartment, then a private villa with its own staff. Her wardrobe transforms from the simple elegance of a dancer to the sophisticated glamour of a power broker's consort. More importantly, she begins to influence Kim Jong-il's decisions in subtle ways. When he asks her opinion about cultural policies, she offers suggestions that sound spontaneous, but are actually carefully considered strategies to consolidate her own position. She recommends appointments that favor her allies, critiques that marginalize her competitors. Sung-hae-rim recognizes what's happening, but finds herself increasingly powerless to fight back. Her son Kim Jong-nam is still a child, unable to advocate for his mother's interests. Her own family lacks the political connections to challenge Ko Yong-hui's growing influence. Most devastating of all, Kim Jong-il's passion for her is clearly waning. The end comes not with a dramatic confrontation, but with a quiet announcement. In the mid-1970s, Sung-hae-rim will travel to Moscow for medical treatment, a euphemism for elegant exile. She will take her son with her, removing herself and her potential rival claimant from the succession equation. For the North Korean regime, sending someone abroad for medical treatment was often a polite way of removing them from political life without public scandal. Ko Yong-hui doesn't orchestrate this exile directly, but her very existence makes it inevitable. She represents everything Sung-hae-rim is not: youth instead of experience, optimism instead of melancholy, possibility instead of burden. As Sung-hae-rim's plane disappears into the gray Moscow sky, Ko Yong-hui stands alone at the pinnacle of Kim Jong-il's affections. The war is over. She has won completely. Victory brings rewards beyond Ko Yong-hui's most ambitious dreams. Kim Jong-il moves her into a palatial residence in central Pyongyang. Not just a house, but a compound complete with gardens, swimming pool, and a staff of dozens. Every room is furnished with antiques and artwork from around the world. Her closets fill with designer clothes from Paris and Milan. Her garage houses a collection of luxury vehicles that would be impressive even by Western standards. The private chef, Kenji Fujimoto, who will later write detailed memoirs about this period, describes a lifestyle of almost surreal luxury. The refrigerators overflow with delicacies flown in from around the world: Danish ham, Iranian caviar, French cheeses, Japanese sushi prepared by master craftsmen. The wine cellar contains vintages worth more than most North Koreans will earn in their lifetimes. Ko Yong-hui has access to anything money can buy, except freedom. She cannot leave the compound without permission. Her visitors are screened and monitored. Her phone calls are recorded. Her mail is read before reaching her. Even her most intimate moments are subject to the surveillance apparatus that surrounds all members of the Kim family. More isolating still, she cannot acknowledge her relationship publicly. While she lives like royalty, she remains officially invisible. North Korean media never mentions her name. State functions proceed without her presence. She is the most powerful woman in North Korea and simultaneously one of the most anonymous. But Ko Yong-hui doesn't waste time lamenting her isolation. Instead, she transforms her golden cage into a base of operations for building real, lasting power. She studies her lover with the intensity of a scholar, learning his moods, his preferences, his psychological triggers. She discovers that Kim Jong-il responds well to gentle criticism delivered with humor, that he craves intellectual stimulation more than mere flattery, that he values loyalty above all other virtues. Armed with this knowledge, she becomes indispensable to him in ways that go far beyond romance or physical attraction. She becomes his confidant, his advisor, his emotional anchor in a world where everyone else wants something from him. According to Fujimoto's accounts, Ko Yong-hui is the only person who can openly scold Kim Jong-il without consequences. When he drinks too much, she tells him to stop. When he treats subordinates too harshly, she moderates his temper. When he neglects his health, she forces him to see doctors. "Dear leader," she calls him in private, but the tone is more that of a concerned wife than a submissive subject. She has achieved what few in North Korean history ever manage. She has made herself personally essential to absolute power. But Ko Yong-hui's greatest triumph, and her most calculated risk, comes with motherhood. In 1981, she gives birth to her first son, Kim Jong-chul. Kim Jong-il is ecstatic, finally having a legitimate heir born to a woman he genuinely loves, rather than to the exiled Sung Hae-rim. The birth transforms Ko Yong-hui's status from favored mistress to essential family member. Now she's not just the woman Kim Jong-il desires. She's the mother of his potential successor. 3 years later comes an even more significant event: the birth of Kim Jong-un on January 8, 1984. This second son will eventually become North Korea's supreme leader. But even as an infant, he represents Ko Yong-hui's ultimate insurance policy against any future rivals. In 1987, she completes her family with the birth of daughter Kim Yo-jong, who will grow up to become one of Kim Jong-un's most trusted advisors and one of the most powerful women in North Korean history. With 3 children binding her to Kim Jong-il, Ko Yong-hui's position becomes virtually unassailable. She's no longer competing for attention. She's building a dynasty. But she approaches motherhood with the same strategic thinking that characterized her rise to power. These are not simply beloved children, but carefully crafted instruments of her ambition. From the earliest age, she instills in her sons a sense of their own destiny. According to various accounts from defectors and foreign observers, she constantly reminds them that they are different from other children, that they carry the sacred bloodline of the Kim family, that they are destined for greatness. She ensures they receive the finest education available, not just the standard North Korean curriculum, but exposure to foreign languages, Western culture, and international perspectives. When Kim Jong-un and Kim Yo-jong are sent to Switzerland for schooling in the 1990s, it's Ko Yong-hui who manages every detail of their education and security. Most importantly, she begins cultivating Kim Jong-un as her chosen successor from an early age. While his older brother, Kim Jong-chul, shows artistic inclinations and a gentle temperament, Kim Jong-un displays the aggressive competitiveness and ruthless intelligence that Ko Yong-hui recognizes as essential for survival in North Korea's brutal political environment. Even as a boy, Kim Jong-un was known for his temper and competitiveness, traits his mother deliberately encouraged, believing they were necessary for survival in the regime. According to Chef Fujimoto, young Kim Jong-un cannot bear to lose at anything: basketball games, video games, academic competitions. When he fails, he doesn't just get upset. He gets angry, demanding another chance to prove himself. Ko Yong-hui nurtures this competitive fire, understanding that it will serve him well in the struggles ahead. She dresses him in military uniforms, teaches him to carry himself with authority, and constantly reinforces his sense of destiny. "You are the Morning Star General," she tells him, using a title that deliberately echoes the revolutionary honorifics given to his grandfather and father. As Ko Yong-hui's children grow, so does her behind-the-scenes influence over North Korean politics. She may not hold official positions, but she begins to shape the regime's power structure in ways that will outlast her own life. She promotes family members to important positions. Her brother, Ko Yong-il, receives a senior post in the Workers' Party. Former colleagues from the Mansudai art troupe find themselves elevated to ministerial positions. A network of loyalty forms around Ko Yong-hui, people who owe their advancement to her favor and who understand that their continued prosperity depends on protecting her interests. More significantly, she begins influencing military appointments. Kim Jong-il frequently seeks her advice on personnel decisions, and she carefully steers him toward younger officers who she believes will be loyal to her sons when the time comes for succession. This is perhaps Ko Yong-hui's most brilliant strategic insight. Understanding that power in North Korea ultimately flows from military support, and that whoever controls the army controls the country. By cultivating relationships with rising military leaders while her sons are still children, she's building the foundation for their eventual rule decades in advance. She also shapes the regime's cultural policies in ways that will benefit her family's long-term interests. Under her influence, Kim Jong-il begins promoting a more nationalistic form of socialism that emphasizes Korean racial purity and historical destiny over international communist solidarity. This ideological shift will later prove crucial in justifying hereditary succession to a third generation, Ko Yong-hui's children. To outside observers who encounter Ko Yong-hui during this period, diplomats, foreign visitors, the handful of international staff allowed into North Korea's inner circle, she appears to be the ideal mother and devoted partner. She's elegant, intelligent, cultured. She speaks lovingly of her children's accomplishments and her pride in their development. But this maternal devotion masks a calculating intelligence that would impress Machiavelli himself. Every decision about her children's education, every friendship she allows them to form, every experience she provides them is designed to prepare them for the ultimate challenge of wielding absolute power. When Kim Jong-un struggles with weight problems as a child, she doesn't simply address it as a health issue. She understands that in a society where the leader's physical appearance is interpreted as a reflection of his strength and capability, her son's obesity could undermine his political prospects. She brings in foreign nutritionists and fitness trainers, turning his weight management into a matter of state security. When Kim Yo-jong shows exceptional intelligence and political instincts, Ko Yong-hui doesn't celebrate her daughter's potential for an independent career. Instead, she begins grooming her as the perfect advisor and protector for her brother. Understanding that in Korean political culture, a trusted sister can be more valuable than any cabinet minister. Every aspect of her children's development becomes part of a comprehensive strategy for maintaining family power across generations. She's not raising children, she's crafting the next generation of North Korea's ruling elite. But this relentless focus on dynastic politics comes at a personal cost that Ko Yong-hui rarely allows others to see. Despite her material comfort and political influence, she lives in fundamental isolation. Her children are her primary emotional connection to the world, but even they cannot fully understand the pressures and calculations that dominate her existence. She has no real friends, only allies and potential threats. Every social interaction is filtered through the lens of political advantage. She cannot express genuine opinions about policies or people without considering how those views might be used against her family's interests. Most poignantly, she cannot share her true origins with her children. They grow up believing sanitized versions of their mother's history, stories of revolutionary dedication and pure Korean ancestry that bear little resemblance to the complex reality of a Japanese returnee who fought her way to power through talent, determination, and ruthless ambition. In North Korea, Zainichi origins, ethnic Koreans from Japan, were considered politically suspect, revealing that truth could have destroyed not only Ko Yong-hui, but also her children's future. This historical revisionism becomes increasingly elaborate as the children grow older and begin to understand their place in North Korea's political hierarchy. Ko Yong-hui must participate in creating myths about her own past, watching as propagandists transform her life story into something more politically acceptable. The irony is profound. A woman who succeeded through acknowledging and exploiting reality must now live within a fiction of her own making. The price of ultimate power is the erasure of the very qualities: adaptability, clear-eyed assessment of situations, willingness to acknowledge uncomfortable truths that made that power possible. As the 1990s progress and Kim Jong-il consolidates power after his father's death, Ko Yong-hui rises higher than anyone thought possible. No longer the ambitious dancer fighting for recognition, she has become the invisible queen of North Korea, the woman whose pillow talk can shape policies affecting millions. But triumph carries a shadow. The mythology built to erase her past grows more elaborate, and her sons, now entering their teens, begin to sense the contradictions. The dynasty she has built rests on carefully buried truths that must never see daylight. By the dawn of the new millennium, her enemies are gone, her children are being groomed as heirs, and her legend has taken root. Yet her greatest battles still lie ahead. The past she buried is stirring back to life, and time itself is about to become her most ruthless enemy. The woman who conquered everything is about to face the one battle she cannot win.